I was playing with the black pieces. I played this game yesterday, and my opponent offered me a simple queen trade. And at the time, I thought it would be a good idea. But this was a decision that I would later come to regret. And from a basic principle standpoint, why was this a bad move? Well, it's because White's king is exposed. White's king has no pawn shelter. I do. My king is safe behind this beautiful wall of pawns. And so trading the queens on a principled level makes no sense. And yet, I convinced myself during the game that this was a good idea. And you might notice that I'm down a piece. There's a bishop, there's two rooks, and white has this extra knight, but I do have 3 pawns for the knight. I have 6 pawns. My opponent only has 3 pawns. So at the time, I convinced myself that, hey, I'm going to trade the queens, but these pawns are just going to be so amazing. I'm going to push them down the board. I'm going to get like 3 extra queens with my pawns, and I'm going to win. Something like that is what I was thinking was going to happen. Well, it turns out that was not the case. The best move was actually just queen to e2, keeping the pressure on this king. I'm threatening here. I'm threatening queen to d3, and it's very difficult for white to find moves that don't just lose, okay? And that's what I should have done, but instead, I traded the queens. And, well, you're going to see the roller coaster that happened after that, but even leading up to this point was pretty interesting. So let's take a look at this game. It's a 10-minute rapid game. I was rated 2281, and I'm trying to increase my rating and get to 2300. Attacks my pawn, I defend my pawn. The Italian game, the 2 knights defense, d3. d3 is kind of the move that people play when they don't really want to go into all the crazy lines that a lot of times go along with the 2 knights defense. They don't want to go for the fried liver. They don't want to go for any other crazy stuff. They just want a calm, kind of quiet game. So he plays d3. I like to play d5 because it sort of forces the issue and makes the game go into these kind of more aggressive, wild territory, whether you like it or not. So here we go. The move was c3. Now, c3 is not a normal move. Usually they castle, so I was a little bit surprised by this. But I said, let me just continue with normal moves, bishop e7, and I wanted to simply castle over here on the king side. And here white played an interesting move, queen to b3. Now, queen to b3 causes me a very annoying problem, because if you'll notice, it's attacking my knight. But if I move the knight away, then I lose the pawn here on f7 with check, which does not look very appealing. But if I try to defend the knight, well, how can I defend the knight? I can't do it with this guy. I could play bishop to e6, but then I'm leaving the b7 pawn free for the taking. So what else can I do? What do you guys think? All right, well, if you had a chance to think through that, there's 2 things I want to point to your bring to your attention. Number 1 is that Stockfish says I should castle. And you might be thinking, wait a second, Stockfish wants me to give up a knight for free just so I can castle? What's the deal there? Well, the idea is that you're going to play knight a5 next, and it actually is going to force the queen to move somewhere. The only place the queen can go to defend the bishop would be b5. But then you could play c6 and actually fork the pieces, defend your knight at the same time, and you're going to get your piece back, and the game's going to go on. So kind of a wild Stockfish thing to think about, but that's what Stockfish wanted. Now, the move that I played was knight to a5. And when I played this move, I saw that my knight was going to get trapped. Okay? And this is how I figured it was going to happen. The queen obviously has to move. And he doesn't want to allow me to trade this knight for this bishop, where I'm pretty happy because then I have the bishop pair. I don't have to worry about this threat anymore. So queen to a4 check is pretty common. And it's a fork. Okay? And what I could do is play c6. This is a common thing if you're ever in this situation. You play c6, it unleashes your queen, and you actually defend the knight at the same time as you block the check. Okay, so I saw this, and then I saw that white was going to capture my knight, and since this pawn is pinned, I actually have to take back with the queen. And then I figured white was going to be saying, well, the knight's sitting over here on the side. Can I take advantage of that? And I was expecting the move b4. Okay, and b4 looks pretty good because my knight is actually trapped. I can't go here, I can't go here, I can't go here, I can't go here. Just going to get captured, so I'm losing a piece, essentially. But what do I get in return for losing this piece? Well, what do you guys think? And this is what I was calculating during the game. If you had a chance to look at that, the move is queen takes d3. Now, this is one of 2 moves, and the reason it's getting the question marks there from Stockfish is it's not the best version. Okay, the best move was actually, according to Stockfish, e4 here. Just immediately going after the knight. The idea is that if you get this check and the bishop blocks, we can follow this up with knight to c4, and we've essentially freed our knight. By making that pawn move, we've created an escape square. And so the knight's no longer trapped, trapped and we go on the offensive and we start attacking. Okay, so that's kind of the idea with what Stockfish wanted. What I saw instead was, well, look, I'll just sack the knight, but I'm going to get a pawn. And I'm also stopping white from castling. This is really critical, okay? The king cannot escape by castling because of my queen. And remember, white's already traded off their bishop, the light-squared bishop, so this queen is actually very powerful. I still have my light-squared bishop, and I felt like I was going to get a lot of compensation, okay? So white takes here, and I played bishop to g4. Now, Stockfish wanted me to defend the pawn, but I was trying to go on the offensive. Bishop to e3, and I saw a nice move here. So if you want to pause, what's the move here for black? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, first of all, I should point out there's lots of good moves for black. Castling is pretty good. Rook to d8 is pretty good. But the move that I played was e4 because it immediately threatens to win the knight back. And if the knight tries to move somewhere, there's checkmate. Okay? That's kind of the idea. You can't move there because checkmate. So you can't move the knight, essentially. So what does white do instead? Knight b to d2. That's really all they could do. Give the piece back and hopefully that, hope they can survive. I said, okay, I'm feeling pretty good about the position here. Grabbed that guy. And then right here, I thought I saw a tactic with bishop takes f3. So if you guys would like to pause, what do you think the tactic was that I thought I saw? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, here's what I was thinking in my mind. I'm going to take this. Pretty annoying move because it attacks the rook, threatens checkmate. So white's going to be forced to take me. But then it opens up a fork where I'm going to win the rook. But then I said, wait a second, if I do that, the king's going to come up and actually defend. And do I have a good move in this position? And I thought that I did. And actually I do. I thought I did, but I do. And the move is queen to c4 check, which is what I played. And why is this so good? Because again, taking control of that diagonal, what it's going to do is force the king to go either back here, which walks into a fork, okay, and I'm going to win the queen, or to go here, which also walks into a fork, and I'm going to win the queen, which means the only square for the king to go to is to d1, but look at this. It's just lined up with my rook. I'm just going to be in a super nice position, and essentially that's what Stockfish says too. You can see the eval bar there, right? I'm winning. I'm winning. I played rook to d8 check. It was better for some reason to castle. I don't exactly know why, but I still feel like this is a decent move. Although Stockfish says you lose some advantage there. Okay, knight to d2. Castled. And even though Stockfish says it's roughly equal, slight advantage for black, this is extremely difficult for white to play. Your rooks are disconnected. Your king is stuck in the middle of the board. I have a rook lined up on it. I have a bishop threatening here, threatening here. This guy's coming over. I would not want to play white in this position. Rook to c1. Queen to g4 check, and I'm feeling like the game is about to be over, okay? King to c2. And here I was like, okay, my position is great, but how exactly do I win the game? And the best that I saw was just grabbing the pawn and gaining a tempo on the queen. It turns out rook to d5, which actually stops white's queen from coming over like we see later in the game, was the best way to do it. It gains a tempo, and it also sets up to double up rooks. And probably even if you take here, you can start thinking about using the rook like this. I mean, just so many good options come after rook to d5. So I missed that one. Bishop takes b4, and here we go. This is the moment in the game that I already kind of mentioned where for some reason I said, yeah, I guess we'll just trade and go into the endgame. What happened in my brain? I don't know. I was doing the right stuff. I was putting the pressure, and I think I just got a little bit scared. I got a little bit scared that I wasn't going to be able to get a big enough attack. I got a little bit scared that the rook was going to line up and that if I had to play g6, the dark squared weaknesses were going to be too much for me. All this stuff was going through my head, and I kind of panicked a little bit. A little bit of panic, I think, and also, like I mentioned, overestimating the power of my pawns, all these things. So I traded queens. Instead of, any number of other moves were better. Queen to e2, queen to d7, queen to e6. All of these moves would have been better. And here we are. I've just given the advantage back to white. Okay, but the game goes on. f6, he goes back. Rook comes over, and I've got pressure here. I have an immediate threat. My immediate threat is if white wastes a move, I'm going to play something. What do you guys think I'm going to play? You had a chance to look at that's correct. I'm going to sack the rook to end up getting two pieces here. And now my rook is invading, and I'm going to have a bishop and a whole bunch of pawns against the rook. It's probably going to be pretty nice. So that was my idea. And white saw that. Play knight to b3. And the reason that saves the problem is because now if I sack, I have no more way to get the knight. Okay? So I played b6, and I'm trying to shut down the knight, also stop the bishop from maybe grabbing a pawn, and let's see how this turns out. So the rook comes over, and I decided that allowing trading was fine. I'm just going to keep the rooks here and let white trade if they want, and I'm trying to set up my pawns in a way that limits the effectiveness of the bishop and the knight. Everything is defended. I have this nice pawn chain. That's what was going through my mind anyway. White decides to trade, and I said, yeah, I guess it's fine. Let's go ahead and trade. So here we go. Bishop to c6. Now, the reason I did this is I was kind of afraid that the king was going to go here. Well, it's when it's white's turn. The king was going to come over, and somehow my bishop was going to get trapped, like it was just going to get stuck back here, and I wouldn't have anywhere to move it to, and I didn't want that to happen. So I felt like it was important that I get it out of there, get it on like a good diagonal where it's going to be more effective. That's the idea. f4, f5. Sometimes when you're in these bishop endings, it's good to have the pawn stuck on the same color as the bishops because, for two reasons. Number one, notice it's stopping this bishop from being effective, right? It can't really go there. But also, this could be a target that I could attack with my bishop later, whereas this pawn is never going to be a target for this bishop. So, but then other times it's actually good to do it because like this, it sort of blunts the effectiveness. So it's kind of hard to say. Anyway, attacks me, I retreat, the king comes up, and right here is where I started to have this moment of, maybe my position's not quite as good as I thought it was. Because if his king is able to infiltrate, what am I going to do? I mean, I don't want to let the king get to the center of the board where it just has access to everything. But it also has this other route to come over here. Because I was thinking maybe I play a6 to stop that. The problem is if I play a6, he's going to get to the center of the board before me. And again, he's still sneaking in here. He's threatening to come here and take, like, it just doesn't look very good for me, right? So I said, okay, I have to stop the king from getting to d5 at all costs. So let's do that. King f7, king e6. We stopped that. But like I said, there's another path in here. And once the king gets there, guess what? It's like Pac-Man. He's going to take all the pawns. Okay, there's a principle in chess. You attack the base of a pawn chain, and you can see why. Because once that one falls, then this one falls, and this one falls. They're all gone. So I started to get a little bit worried here, thinking back to my queen trade, thinking back to my piece sacrifice, all that stuff. Like, what did I do? Why did I do this? Oh, now I'm going to lose the game, right? However, I said, okay, let's just think about this. If the king is going to spend all the time running over here, at least it's going to give me this pass pawn, maybe even this guy. Somehow I need to use that to my advantage. Okay? So king to d5. And I'm using my king to help support this, but also I'm eyeing these guys over here. Let's see how it goes. He tries to stop me, and actually he does stop me. I can't get in. This is a total wall. So what do you think I did? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, I played bishop d4 with the sole purpose of forcing a way for my king to get in. And also trading off the bishops, and then the king against the knight with some passed pawns can be dangerous. It can be difficult for knights to stop pawns sometimes, especially when your king is helping, and especially if his king is going to run all the way over here, which is kind of what I expected, right? So that's why we bring the bishop in, okay? Takes, the king comes up, and now it starts to get really interesting. He goes for the pawns. He's going to munch them. There's nothing I can do, right? I can't defend this. I can't stop that. So I have to go on the offensive, and I have to figure out the best way to do it. And one option I was thinking was just immediately push this guy. And I wasn't like totally sure what was going to happen. So like, for example, I push, he takes, I push, he moves his knight maybe like here, and somehow I like try to bring my king up. The problem that I thought was that he's going to have this pawn. By the time I can figure out how to get this guy to push, I'm in trouble. And as I'm looking at this now, I see stock for saying g5. Not a move I considered, sacking that to get a new pass pawn, and I would have won had I gone this route. Okay, interesting. But I didn't see that. This idea I totally missed. And that was, I think, crucial. That was crucial. Anyway, that's what I was afraid of by just pushing this one. So instead of, realizing this, my alternate plan was I'll use my king to take this, and then I'll have another pass pawn here. The reason why g5 is so much better, if you're wondering, is because it takes me 3 moves before this guy's even ready to start moving. Whereas when I play g5, it happens immediately. I'm literally immediately threatening to take this. And so white would have to take, and then the pawn is ready to go. So as far as like creating a passed pawn, that is the fastest way to do it over here on the f file. You can see if you do it too early, it doesn't work. So it's a very tricky position, very tricky. So I played king e3. He moved his knight, and I captured it. And again, this is where g5 would have been better because it's just a quicker way to get a queen, right? If white takes me, 1, 2, 3, 4. If white doesn't take me, 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing. And as opposed to what happened in the game where I have to take, it takes me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See that? It's just so slow. It's just so slow. So he goes there. I take the pawn, and then he starts munching. Okay. And again, I have the decision. Do I go for this pawn? Do I go for this pawn? Do I go for both pawns at the same time? Like, what do I do? I decided on king e3, which was the best move. And I think that was a bit of luck because I'm like, well, this is sort of like a in-between route, right? This guy, this guy. Okay. He takes another one. c4. And look at the eval bar. Now, why is that the case? Well, I don't even know if I totally understand. I guess the idea is f4. If he takes this, king d3, the knight has no way to stop the pawn. The knight has no way to stop the pawn. And this guy is too slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves. I only need 3 moves. And you could try to bring the knight around, but it just doesn't cut it. There's just no way to stop the pawn. So that was the simplest and easiest way. That was it. You push the pawn at the right moment, you cut off the knight. Okay. I was like, I don't want to lose this pawn. I want to keep 2 passed pawns, even though really, as long as you have 1, it's enough. Whoops, sorry. So I played this move in the game. Okay. a4. f4. The game is supposed to be a draw. a5. He messes up. He needed to play knight to a3 to attack the pawn, and when I push it, then play a5. What's the idea here? Because now when I play f3, a6, f2, a7, queen, queen, and this is a drawn position somehow. Wow. And I mean, this is far from a draw in a real game, but according to Stockfish, it's a draw. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. I want to show you how this game finished out. I pushed this one. He pushed this one. f3. The knight comes over. King to d3. And this is what I was talking about. Sometimes the knight has trouble when the king and multiple pawns are pushing down the board because the knight's sort of a little bit awkward. It doesn't have that long range effect, right, that the bishop can. And so you could see that here. King to d2, I totally messed it up, by the way. All I had to do was push c3. And what's the idea? In my mind, I was thinking he's going to take me. I don't have to take back. See, I was thinking I take back. He goes here, I go here. It's probably like not good for me because he's going to get the queen. And I was like, I don't know if I can win this. But I don't even have to take it. I just play f2 and get the queen straight away. See, this idea is, yeah, it was just totally off in this game. Anyway, this is what happened. I went here with the king. He played a6. He just decided to allow me to get the queen, and I had the extra pawn, and it was going to be enough to win. There you go. We both get queens, but like I said, I've got 2 extra pawns, and it's defended, so you can't pick that one off with a queen check. And after a few more moves, I was able to win. Now, it wasn't actually that simple, but basically what I decided to do is like, look, I've got the pawn. I've got my king there. I just need to push it and support it with my king. I don't think he's going to be able to stop me. And that's what happened. No, I lost the other pawns. It didn't really matter. Pushed it, got the king out of the way, got the extra queen, and I won the game. It was a roller coaster of a game. It was wild. The queen trade was a questionable decision. Probably could have made my life so much easier if I just kept the queens on the board. But that's chess. It happens sometimes. And I'm glad that I just came out on top in this one. But I think a lot of you guys can probably relate to this up and down. You make the wrong decision. You were winning. You were losing. You were losing. You were winning. Hope you learned something, and see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.